Okay, it is time to prime this thing up. So we got the valve covers off here. See the cams and the lockouts and all that good stuff. We got our same tube as the LS. And down here, into the oil pressure sensor is where we got the hose hooked up. So, we can prime it up with the air. We'll keep our eye on all the followers here and make sure that we get oil up everywhere. That's really the biggest deal on these. So, get it primed up, put the covers back on. In the car it goes. Let's get to it. Turning the air on. It's hard to focus. You can see oil coming in the bottom there. Kind of see it flowing around all the lifters. Like that one, you can see it dripping out. You can see it coming down here from the chains.
Probably shut it off.
And now we shut it off. Let it just kind of drip back, but I believe we got everything. It's kind of hard to tell on this one with all the cams and stuff in the way, but it looks like everything has been oiled anyway. It's had oil come out of all the springs and in that area and stuff like that, so I would think that we're pretty good. But boy, it kind of does make a mess. Drips out of everywhere and fun stuff. What's up? So, the last clip you've seen, we were putting the engine in the car. So, I have to say that I did not expect it to take as long as it has to get this thing going, but good Lord, there's a lot of stuff to do, even after I had the mock-up motor in, but so far so good. She's coming along. So it's been about a week and a half-ish since I put the motor in, and everything's really went pretty well. I wouldn't even want to call it a hiccup with the converter, just more me forgetting. But all that's fine, it's no big deal. And I've just been plumbing away, just plumbing fuel lines and water lines and all kinds of stuff. But so far, it's really looking quite nice. I mean, some of it I'm not a huge fan of, like having to put this tank here. It's not ideal, but it'll be all right. So. Needed somewhere to fill this thing where it's higher than the tallest point, which would be that little fitting right there, you can kind of see. And so this tank was what it is. I actually was going to use this one. I have this black tank here. You see I already painted it and everything. But I had a plan that I was going to put it over here next to this guy. This is the transmission overflow. But I wanted to bolt the transmission overflow to that and then have them together, but all that just didn't fit in this tiny little space here. Don't mind that, I gotta hook that up yet. But so I ended up buying this tank and painting that and welding all my fittings on it and doing all that good stuff. So that's where that's gonna be. But then it kind of made these routing a little bit weird, but I think it actually looks pretty decent. It kind of flows nice with these ones, and there's another one that goes kind of under here that I'll probably attach to something somehow, but I still got to put one more right there, but I don't have that hose yet, so can't do that one. I got the EGTs in. One thing I really regret was I bought the harness from Holly, and it's just super long, kind of in all the wrong places too, if that makes any sense. Like, to get the intake and the crank trigger, you had to have the harness pulled back, but then everything on the outside, like coming up to the TPS, this will change. I just had to do that for now, but TPS and oil pressure and all them other sensors, everything's under the intake on this, so they're super long, so it was just kind of awkward and weird. I really wish I just would have bought the HCR Innovations harness. It is more money, but obviously it'd be a way nicer piece, so kind of disappointed that I did that, but whatever. if I ever replace it, I'll tell you, you know what I'm doing. So got that part done. I did decide, this is kind of a big change. I should have filmed it because it was kind of weird, but decided to add the little wastegate dumps. So it turned out pretty good. The angle don't quite match perfect, but I really didn't have a whole lot of room. I didn't want to cut the pipe and make it even shorter yet, but it did work. And I also did it on the other side, which you can see there. That one, I got the angle a lot nicer, but it's really kind of tricky with the exhaust pipe, the way that it runs. Like, you've had very little room to make it exit at a certain point. I didn't really want to do a whole bunch of dips and stuff because it does get pretty low down there, but it turned out pretty nice. But yeah, so far just plugging away. I still got a little bit left to go, but really all the major stuff is done. And hopefully we have no problems and we can fire it up. But 4th of July is coming and I will be out of town for a little bit. So I think we'll end up starting it up after the 4th of July, but that's okay. Like I said, just kind of chipping away at it now. I want everything to be pretty nice and easy to work on, even though I don't want to work on it. That's always the idea, is you don't have to work on it, but you never know. So trying to make it convenient and everything simple and not that hard. And so far it's really has turned out to be pretty easy. Intake comes off of this thing in probably like 5 minutes. It's not even bad. And everything else, you know, all up under where the exhaust is and down where the headers are down there. I mean, that stuff's all, it fits really good. It takes just a couple seconds to pull off. The headers are a little tricky, but all I do is take off this driver one. The passenger one you can take off outside of the car if you had to do that for whatever reason. I don't think this setup is a cylinder head pulling deal in the car. It's kind of easier to take the engine out, so hopefully we don't have to do that. But you can get both valve covers off, so that's pretty nice. But yeah, everything's going pretty good, but I'm gonna keep chipping away here. I'm probably gonna hook the transmission up and put the bolts in, but I'll show you one cool thing I did here. So since I do have a mid plate, if you get a PTC converter, they just send you 1/4-inch spacers. And then you've got to use your spacer after that. So I just made my own that already have my proper spacing in them. So these will actually be pretty easy to install since they're big. You're not fighting like an 1/8-inch washer or whatever. So these are 336 wide, and that gave me my perfect spacing. But it ended up actually being pretty perfect on it. I mean, had a 1/4-inch spacer. It was exactly a 1/2 inch the flex plate was away from the back of from the converter. So then with the 250 spacers, you had 250 to pull out. And so then I added right in between an 1/8 and 3/16 to get the number that I got. And yeah, that should make it really nice. But I'm just gonna crawl into the car now, check the fitment again with this thing, just to make sure that everything is good, because that would be the last problem I wanna have. So I'm gonna hop under there, do that, and I'll show you how it goes. So there, you can see I got my little spacer in there. You can barely see a gap. This will be kind of tough for you guys to see, but here's a 125 drill bit, and it keeps catching on the magnet. But that goes right in there. And then I have a 3/16 drill bit. Actually, I lost it, but that one doesn't fit in there, so that's pretty good. I can move that, and you can see my little magnets that I use to hold it up. But we should be dialed there, so I'm going to bolt this converter up and keep on keeping on. Ready?
Yep. Want me to throttle it if I have to?
Yep. fucking runs though.
Yeah.
I thought it sounded like it was missing one. Right? 5, 6. Maybe the EGT just ain't reading. Fire it back up and see.
Does,
What's up? Sorry guys, I've been doing really bad at filming, but I'm just trying to keep up here. So that clip you seen there, we finally got the thing to start up, right? Everything was all good, and then, pretty good, I guess, for a startup. So the time lapse that you seen there was about, I don't even know. The whole video was 6 minutes long, but we probably had an hour into trying to get this thing to start. And couldn't get it, and I'm like, what's the deal? Like, I just used the LS tune-up. Should have been super close. Or maybe not super close, but close enough to at least get it to run. But nothing. And so, finally, after about an hour and a half, I realized that I had put the front bumper on and left the turbo covers on. You know, the ones to keep dust and stuff out of there. And I'd had the bumper on for probably like a week at this point, so it just slipped my mind. So you can see they're up there, but not at all visible from really any angle. So I mean, really dumb, super dumb. It did basically exactly what, just run for like a half a second and then shut off. So that was so stupid. Realized it, pulled the covers off, and then in that next clip you've seen that I actually got it running. So that was great. And then I did show you a couple other little clips there of the manual valve inside of the transmission. So I have swapped valve bodies on Turbo 400s before. Only once actually, but I don't remember having to hook up that manual valve to the shift linkage. And if I did, it wasn't nearly as I don't want to say it was difficult, but like you got to get the governor tube in the back of the case and kind of slip that thing up in there so that hooks onto the shift lever, the inside shift lever of the transmission. And I just never did that. So after I got it running and it got it to sit here and idle, I couldn't do anything. It wouldn't move forward. It wouldn't move backwards. And then I was like, what in the world? So shout out to Greg Schmidt, BIG Performance. He really helped me out there. I sent him a couple videos, kind of explained what I had going on. And he's like, I feel like you did something wrong when you put the valve body on. And I was like, you're probably right. And that's exactly what it was. So luckily it was just an hour and a half fix, not all that big of a deal. And then we were good there. Then I backed it out. And then, and I can show you this on the laptop. I'll flip the camera around a little bit. And maybe I got something set up wrong, but that's just how it was. So there's a ton of videos online about how to pulse your alternator so it charges. And so if you remember from way back old videos that I put a 14 volt battery in this thing, so I want to charge around like 16-ish. And so you can do it through a PWM in the computer. And I set all that stuff up, and I wanted it to pulse, so it would charge, right? And I could not get it to charge to save my life. And it ended up being backwards. Turning the duty cycle down made it charge instead of turning it up. So maybe that's just how it is, and I was just thinking about it wrong, but I just figured it would have been the other way. So dicked around with that for a little while, and then once I got that, I was like, oh, it's pretty much good to go. So after that, I basically let it run for like 30 minutes and got, just a real solid heat cycle, got the engine up to temp, confirmed the water. I've always had electric water pumps, so this is my first belt-driven water pump on like a race car before. So, kind of a little nerve-wracking there, but it appeared that everything was working good and everything was all good. And so gave it a good heat cycle, revved it up a little bit, and pulled her back inside. Because they say now with, I have copperhead gaskets on this motor. I have top fuel hoops, so they say you need to re-torque. And if you've watched any Coyote videos from Fast Forward, any of them guys, they're pulling, if they're doing that, they're pulling all the cams out and basically taking the whole engine apart to do it. And I didn't really want to do that. So I found the perfect combination of socket and extension where you can get around the cam in basically every location and torque them. The only ones I couldn't get to were just because of shock towers. I mean, you had to take the engine out to do that once, but nothing took torque. If there was going to be any of them that would be loose, it would be more than likely be on the inside, being, there's so much heat everywhere on the inside. So I got basically everything except for the very outside one on the driver's side, and then it would be like the second one in. And I didn't crack them loose, nothing like that. I just pulled them and I got nothing out of all of them. So that was super good. So after that, basically, we were ready to go for a drive. And transmission was working then at that point. I'd had all the gears. It had good line pressure, good charge pressure. Everything was normal. Like when I ran it for 30 minutes, it come right up to, normal temperature. It didn't do anything weird. And so I decided to take it for a little spin. Didn't want to do anything too crazy. Just went around the block once and it was all good. Then I just drove it into town once quick, and that was about it. So super stoked that all that went good. And like I said, aside from the valve body thing, it was really about the most successful fire up I've probably ever had, besides then the turbo cover thing. I mean, there wasn't really any leaks. Nothing was dripping. Nothing was doing anything weird. It just worked. So it was kind of wonderful. I really liked it. And then, of course, I got the interior all put back together, so it's back in its usual form. Got it washed because if you'd noticed in the previous videos, this thing was absolutely disgusting. So it was nice to get everything all dialed in. But I'll flip the camera around and kind of show you what we got. All right, so here she is. See, I had to put a little water tank here, so it was the highest point of the system, because you got a tall fitting right in there, and then you got stuff there, and yeah, so I ended up buying this little tank. It was like 40 bucks, and I welded these fittings on, and it all turned out pretty dang nice. And then made this little bracket right here you can kind of see to hold it up so nothing's falling. And then got my hoses kind of routed. I'm a little not sure if I'm gonna keep this like this here, but it's decent. I mean, it all looks pretty good. And then I got my alternator down there all hooked up, and then I ran out of black heat shrink, so I had to use some red. I'll probably change that at some point here too once I get some more. But other than that, it really turned out pretty good. I like how everything is laid out. I mean, you see the turbo exhaust down there and exhaust over here and over there. But it all just came out really nice and clean. I love the wastegate exits. That was kind of a last minute thought, and I just dig the way it turned out. It's super nice. So very stoked about that. Just really stoked about the whole thing. Got my EGTs going. Everything just seems to be pretty mint. So very excited about it all. And here's a little view of the radiator and intercooler setup there. Kind of a lot of stuff going on, but that's just the way she be. And then maybe we can look at, see some of the stuff in there, and then up there, see the turbo, the other turbo over here. But yeah, it's pretty dang awesome. you're seeing a couple clips of me driving around. Just from the first couple drives, I was like, this thing just seems really peppy. Keep in mind, I just kind of been tuning it while I've been driving it around a little bit, and you know, some driveway revs and stuff, so I don't have all of it kind of perfect yet, but it runs pretty good enough to drive around, that's for sure. So I kind of had everything seeming to be pretty happy in the driveway, and I'm like, well, let's see what it does on the brake, and I'll show you that next. The thing seemed super peppy, just all around, like revved really fast, like just kind of even light throttle stuff, like the turbo seemed to wind up pretty quick, so I'm like, this thing should be peppy. Let's give it a whirl. Turned off basically all the boost builder stuff and just let it do its thing. All natural, no BS, and here's what happened. As you've seen there, it lit up fast. It was like 2.8 seconds or something to 10 pounds. I'm like, that's freaking awesome. Just the fact, you know, you see a lot of stuff about coyotes and they're struggling to spool up with bigger turbos. And these aren't huge by any means, but you know, it's just only 302 cubic inches. So it is pretty small. But the fact that it just did that was awesome, especially coming off of last year and the transmission problems, which caused the spooling problems and all that not fun stuff. It was great to see it just light right up like nobody's business. So that made me incredibly happy for it to do that. Just a lot of confidence going up to the light when it's like that. And you know, if you get some bad air, it's really hot, the thing's still probably gonna go, where the other one was a little finicky. If it was hot and warm, you probably lost a second, honestly, on spooling that thing up, where this one, you still might lose a second, but it's still going to be fast, because I'll definitely put my tables, not the same tables, it doesn't need that hardcore of a treatment, but I'll definitely put some boost builder stuff in there, because, you know, even if I can make it faster yet, why not? Like, all that does is improve the life of everything. So I'll definitely do a little bit more working on that, but so far the street drives have been great. So coyotes are weird. They run a head temperature sensor and they don't actually have anything in like water ports. So I added one of Motion Raceworks' new DTM water temp sensors into right here where I believe where your heater core stuff goes. And that one is plugged, and this other one over here, this side just loops back into my tank here. So I decided to just drill and tap the cap for an 1/8 inch NPT sensor. So that's what I did there. And the water temp has been reading like 158 while I've been driving around, and the head temperature says like 178. Not sure if that's normal. Any coyote guys see this video that have done something similar? Let me know, because I'd be relatively interested. I mean, the thing does have a super badass radiator, super badass set of fans, and they come on based off of the head temperature. So not really sure. I've never ran that water temp sensor before, and if you look at the chart, I took like a 1.5 minute data log, and it's flat, like 156 to 158 through the whole thing. Not sure if it's just that stable or what, but it's kind of interesting. But also, if I look at the coolant temp, that is also relatively stable. So kind of interesting, like just a flat line, basically identical to the other one. So I have to believe that it's right. It's just interesting. It runs a lot cooler than I expected. And I also keep forgetting that it's just reading the head, because that's what my dash is, off the head temp, not the water. And I can change it, of course, but I just haven't gotten that far yet. But super interesting, kind of something I thought was pretty gnarly. But that's about going to wrap up this video. Next video, we should be on the dyno. That's the plan here, is get on the dyno and get this thing tuned and kind of get a feel for what kind of power it makes and where and all that good stuff. And then we can go to the track and do some figuring out, basically. I don't know, maybe the converter will be super loose and that's why it spooled so fast, but I don't really know. It's got a PTC 18-0 with a 390 rear gear. I mean, It should be all right, but time will tell. So yeah, I don't know. Not sure what to think yet. And I did have intentions on switching the rear gear, but I'm just gonna stick with what it's got and just try it, because why not? So that's a wrap for this video. Next video, hopefully we're on the dyno making some power.